Excellent job, Frank. Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. Now, again, with due respect to schedules, if you've noticed on your clock, we're running a little bit behind. So we're going to go to question and answer immediately because Frank is on a very tight schedule. He's got another conference that he has to join. If you've got a specific question for Dr. Mitloehner and his research out in California, some of the numbers or any of that, I'm going to ask you to go to the podium or go to the microphones directly because, like we said, we got to let Frank go sooner than we wish. I wish you were here, Frank. I'd love to talk to you more face to face about this, but we appreciate the research and I guess the upside message that we could be the saviors, not the scoundrels, as we get this kind of message out further. And that is, as a media person, that is a message that is not very often heard. So thanks again. Any questions for Frank? All right, Frank, buddy. So if you've got a poll to make your next speaking engagement, we understand and respect that. I'm going to ask John and Michelle to please come back up on stage. We're going to take the question and answer, try to get as much of your inquiries taken care of as we can before we have to take just a quick break, change out chairs, change out some of these PowerPoints and get going. So if you've got anything, you heard John talking about what's going on just down the road at Center for Dairy Research and the partnerships that they've already been able to work. And again, Michelle giving us really a global perspective that I said to him, I haven't seen numbers like that pulled it all together, what the world expects, maybe even versus what we expect in Wisconsin or in the United States. So questions for either of these gentlemen? John, talk to me a little bit about the commercial value on some of the byproducts that you were talking about. I mean, I think all of us, a lot of us in the dairy industry knew about the unfriendly byproducts out there. But, you know, when you start thinking about engineering it, turning it into bio chemicals that are positive, reach for the stars for me. What is the commercial value that we could actually be looking at if we can figure out how to take what you're working on and scale it up?
Well, a great question. I think, you know, I gave you one example of something that would be relatively easy to make, which is lactic acid, because our cultures already make lactic acid. That currently the global market is about 150,000 tons, about a $3 billion market right now, and is growing anywhere from 10 to 15% per annum. And the big thing for that is once some adoption of things like polylactic acid for certain types of bioplastics is adopted, that's just going to skyrocket. So in terms of just that one alone, which is an easy one for our cultures and our bacteria to produce, there's already a very substantial market that we could do. Most of that is, there's a small amount of it produced by bio at the moment, but it's produced by cane sugar. And I guess it's back to a bigger topic. If you're growing crops on arable land to produce something, you're competing with food. You know, as we look in the decades ahead, we need arable land to be producing food so we can feed the world population versus use a renewable waste or feedstock that could do the same thing. So that's part of the trade-offs we got to think about is where are those trade-offs and have we a better source?
Yeah.
Our materials too are relatively cheap. You know, if you think about the permeates and so on, they're very low cost raw materials that could be used. So that gives you a great starting point to invest in some technologies. But I would say the biggest bottleneck right now is not thinking about opportunities for making chemicals. It's some of those blocks that I talked about. We need to engineer the bugs, develop reactor conditions, and then actually the isolation and purification is often where the cost is and where things fall down. If it's too costly to separate this from all the other materials, then you know it doesn't become a cost-effective process.
One other question, maybe? I'm just going to ask that. It's my job. So, understanding that there is a passion for climate change, smart agriculture, et cetera, you keep going back to, and I understand, petroleum-based products and how we could supersede them in certain spaces. Are they going to let it happen?
Well, that's a great question. I guess it's not going to happen overnight. But there's going to be, you know, over the next couple of decades, there's going to be a change. I think everybody recognizes it. But I think the change has to be driven by business opportunities and adding value, as well as in some parts of the world, it's going to be driven by the stick and the regulatory and everything
Yeah.
else. So I look at it as right now, as Frank talked about in California, that has been driven by more carrot, but in Europe, it's been driven by the
By more
stick.
stick,
So
yeah.
I mean, we got to recognize that there are two drivers right there. I'd rather be in the carrot territory and the innovation territory and find good opportunities right now and make good business sense and return some value back to the farmers. You know, that's at the bottom line what you want to do.
Rick, I appreciate it, but we are running really behind. Can you just hang on? Maybe we'll find a spot for you. What do you say, 5 minutes?